From the United States Capitol's Congressional Auditorium in Washington, D.C., the Government Blockchain Association presents The Future of Money, Governance, and the Law.
Okay, so I'm really honored to be here. I am one of those guys that tears up when I say the Pledge of Allegiance. I wore my We the People tie, and it's just a great privilege to think about where we are and what good has been done here. We'll just ignore any bad that's been done here. And I would like to talk about how we can achieve the goals that the previous three intro people talked about today. And oops, look at that. Looks like I made a mistake on the date. So let's see, is there any way to fix that? Yeah, in fact, there is. And you know, the good thing about that is if you make a mistake in a digital document and you want to fix it afterwards, no one knows the difference. That, of course, is the problem that we attempted to work on when Stuart Haber and I first began working at Bell Communications Research back in 1989. Namely, how are we going to create immutable digital records so that the historical record is accurate and we can ensure the integrity of a digital-based world? This on the right is a younger picture of, slightly more handsome picture of me many years ago when we first did that original work. And, you know, it's funny, it got a fair amount of attention at the time, but fast forward 13 years later, and that Bitcoin paper came out, and suddenly it started getting a lot more attention. I guess money talks. But for those of you that are unfamiliar with the connection, here are the 8 footnotes at the end of the Bitcoin white paper, and 3, 4, and 5 are references to the work Stuart and I did. Actually, 2 is 2, but why quibble? And here, just for those of you that are historical aficionados, here's the 1992 original patent application that first shows a chain of blocks cryptographically tied together. So the issue is, which of 2 speakers am I? Am I the old guy who totters up to the stage and says, when I was young, blah, 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 and my current commentary is irrelevant? Or am I the guy that actually has some historical perspective that can be useful in predicting where things are going? You're going to know the answer to that question in 26 minutes and 30 seconds. You know, many people are surprised to understand, as Bryant pointed out, that the blockchain precedes the Satoshi white paper by quite some time. Here's an article from Motherboard, talks about a blockchain that's been in continuous commercial operation since 1995, fully 13 years before the Bitcoin paper. And that's my collaborator, Stuart. And so there's a lot of confusion about what constitutes a blockchain. And so we're actually going to build one right now. If you've got a smartphone, and I assume everyone has a smartphone, you want to go to gazillion.org. Note the spelling, it's all I's. Why gazillion? Because we wanted to give fair warning to Google that they are no longer the only big number in town. And we are going to build this blockchain live. I'll walk you through it. Don't worry if you've gotten there and you're not sure what to do. I have to go there first. So you should get to a screen that looks something like this. And what you're going to want to do is, I have a code to join an existing blockchain, or I know what I'm doing. Okay, and you want to join the blockchain called We the People. Now, I'm in there first because I get to create the Genesis block because I do. But we're all going to collectively create this blockchain, and you're all going to your smartphones are about to function as a node in the blockchain. So typically when I give this talk or talks like this, I find some local event that's related to the venue where we all can make predictions. Not that there's anything else going on in this building today, but we're not going to touch that. We're going to go to a safer place. We're all going to predict who's going to win the Super Bowl. Okay? So let me go first. And then you see this little thing here? You should get one, and you'll be able to do it after I've entered mine. Let's see here. Hang on. Nope, we're not. Yeah. All right, I'm going to put my name in. We'll call it Scott. We're all on a first name basis. You don't have to put in a real email address, but I encourage you to, because if you do, first of all, you won't get spammed, but you'll receive some digital tchotchke from this meeting. You'll receive the blockchain that we're building. And so here's my message. I'm going to say San Francisco 20, Kansas City 19. You heard it here first, folks. Okay, now a couple of things have just happened, and I want to talk you through it. I've created an entry, but we haven't yet built the blockchain because there are no other participants. But at this point, you may now press that same triangle-shaped play button and put your own entries in. Please go ahead and do that now. And we'll start building the blockchain. See, we're adding people here. Michael, Joe, keep going. We need one more participant to build the minimum blockchain. As soon as that fourth entry goes in, we start building the Merkle tree. Here's the Genesis block. Oh, we've got 10 people, 11. So we're building the chain. And I'll give people a little bit more time to collectively build the chain. Now what's happening is, you'll notice that this is my entry, okay? And this is my receipt. This links me to the backbone of the blockchain. This is my smartphone's personal copy of the blockchain. My smartphone is functioning as a node, as is yours. You should each have received this backbone to the blockchain. You now have a copy of the master file, okay? I'm going to let a few more people enter in, and then we're going to demonstrate how we make use of this. I guess we need 51 to constitute a majority in this building, or at least one half of this building. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and build. You can continue to participate, but I'm going to go ahead on with the demo. So I've made the prediction. It's a week later, or I want to make sure that my prediction has been properly recorded in the blockchain. So I'm requesting validation. Now, this is something that people, even many blockchain experts, are not familiar with. So pay attention here, if you would, just for a moment. What happens, and this is a demonstration of the originally built blockchain, is that any central authority is now complete. There's a pseudo-random, deterministic sorting algorithm that selects 3 of the members of the blockchain community at random, sends them my claim of receipt. They validate it against their own personal copy of the blockchain. And this is the disintermediation moment. There is no central authority. And so we're waiting for, Brian has already validated his copy. We're waiting for Martha. She's validated her copy. And Mark has also. So all 3 people that it was sent to have correctly validated the copy. And so I know that, in fact, I have a proper copy of my certificate. But now it's a week later. And it didn't actually go so well for San Francisco. And so I say, well, who would notice if I changed it to KC 20, San Francisco 19, so I could tell all my friends that, I got it right, or that I was at Woodstock, or, All right, now I'm going to request validation. Again, the central entrant is completely out of the loop, and now 3 entirely different people have been called on as public citizens to validate my tampered document, and all 3 of the attempts, as you can see, are failing. That really is the essence of the blockchain. Obviously, there's much built on top of that: smart contracts, tokens, mining. Don't get me started. But we already have the essence of the blockchain, and to me the key is this: we, the people, collectively own the proof of integrity. Okay? And in a manner that Adam Smith would have been proud of, we each have our own self-interest for holding on to our receipt and our copy of the blockchain, namely so that we can prove our documents. And yet, in this marvelous invisible hand demonstration, each of us, our self-interest to hold on to our documents, provides the integrity for the satisfying the needs of others, that their documents also have that same quality. That, to me, is the magic of the blockchain. And if we want to put it in federal terms, this is the systems of checks and balances that operates amongst us in validating the integrity of the world's documents. So let's go back to our previously scheduled presentation. And so everything's great with the blockchain, right? Actually not. Things haven't gone as well as people were hoping they would go. We're however many years into this newly reignited adventure, and yet many observers, skeptics and critics alike, would suggest that not a lot has been accomplished. And I think we have to own a little bit of that criticism. But this is not a French film, so it's not going to end on a depressing note. One of my sons is a French major, and we have this running thing about that. There's a good news story here. I still have 16 minutes, 56 seconds to make it right. But let's at least analyze why it is that things have been perhaps problematic, more difficult than many may have expected initially. It leads some people to draw a decision tree about blockchains like this. That's my other son, the economist, who suggested that I could short-circuit this talk. But again, I think we can do better. Let's understand in its essence what the blockchain is, and then what the variation in the space is, okay? To me, the blockchain is fundamentally a set of cryptographically linked records whose cryptographic linkage makes them tamper evident, and the subsequent wide distribution of those records that makes the collective record effectively immutable, or, to get technical, append-only immutable. The issue is there are hundreds of blockchains and blockchain proposals out there, but they all share that in common and then differ according to these 5 dimensions or characteristics. This, for a physicist, is the phase space of the blockchain, or for an engineer, this is the design space. What should be the content? How is identity handled? What incentives are there to keep the system functional? What computation is done where? Again, with apologies to mining. Actually, I'm not apologizing. And how is governance managed? Within those 5 dimensions, you can categorize every blockchain project that has been proposed to date. And I think the problem is that, and this goes to the title of my talk, Mythical Ends from Technical Means, is that I think we relied a little bit in the beginning on the technology alone in its nascent state to deliver all of the idealistic goods. Okay, we've created some sort of living, decentralized automaton. We're going to disintermediate and disrupt banks and other nation states, not this one. We're going to reclaim the golden age of the internet. We're going to turn the Gini coefficient to 0, and what list would be complete without world peace? Again, the blockchain as a technology is certainly consistent with many of these idealistic aspirations, but it does not deliver it ab initio just by being that technology. And I think we have failed to do the hard work of creating viable and attractive use cases that are user-centered and have compelling business value propositions that let them grow from small efforts into fully disruptive conclusions. And so what to do? This is the part where the talk hopefully starts to get more optimistic. We're at 13:15. Well, I am not a cynic. I am an idealist, but I don't think these are the specific ideals that we need to focus on in order to realize the future that we seek. You know, it's said that one of the easiest ways to try to prompt the federal government into action is to claim that some other country is stealing a march on us. It's tempting, for example, given the announcements in Italy and the European Union, in Singapore, and also that large nation on the Asian mainland that has fully embraced blockchain. It's tempting to draw them up as a kind of bogeyman to prompt effort. But I think that's selling out to the American ideal. And so what I would like to propose instead is that there's enough in our own history to inspire us to work in the blockchain for our own interests and the interests of the world. And I have 5 recommendations I'd like to finish with. I'd like to create blockchain with American characteristics. The first is to create transparency and integrity for existing government records. I think the Washington Post now has a tagline that says, "Democracy dies in darkness." And by registering internal and external documents on the blockchain, we can shine greater light on the operations of our federal, state, and local governments. And I don't see the downside. The next thing I'd like to suggest is, however we handle voting, whether in paper or hanging chat or electronically, I'm not taking any particular position, but there is absolutely no reason that the world's greatest democracy should not have a truly unimpeachable, no pun intended, record of its voting, so that we make every vote count by ensuring that we have counted every vote. There's simply no excuse for us to not have embraced this as the world's leading democracy. We should set an appropriate standard. The next one is going to take a little bit more explaining. And that is, many people are concerned with issues of privacy, and rightly so, and yet You know, to really solve a problem, you have to accurately diagnose it. And I think privacy is often masquerading for what it really is, which is information asymmetry. Let me unpack that for a second. Suppose you make a rental car reservation because you're traveling to some outside of your state city. Rental cars, for those of you that are younger, are what we used to use before there was Uber. Okay. You call up Hertz and you say, I need to make this reservation, such and such a day. Fine. They say, okay, your confirmation number, ABCD123. You say, thank you. 2 weeks later, you show up at the Hertz rental car desk and you say, hi, I'm Scott Stornetta, I've got a reservation. They said, can you give me your confirmation number? Sure, ABCD123. And the person working there types and time lingers on, and finally there's this uncomfortable moment where the person says, I'm sorry, I don't have any record of that. Okay? That is information asymmetry. The centralized authority has a database, you have a confirmation number, okay? And guess who's going to win in this argument? But in a blockchain-based world, there is no asymmetric power play. You have as valid a copy of the record that you're entitled to the reservation as they do. And so there is this huge potential peer-to-peering effect that can occur when we reduce information asymmetry. And this is not the forum to talk about it, but one of the things that I'm very passionate about is the fact that many of the so-called privacy arguments are actually, at their heart, information asymmetry arguments, and correctly diagnosing them leads to a longer-term viable solution to the so-called privacy problem. And to me, it is as fundamental as a vector that moves in the direction of liberty and justice for all. Let's go to the fourth point. Devolving power to the community. You know, part of the point of a blockchain is that it allows us to trust a record without having to trust a centralized authority. Now, good government often has to step in and function as that minimal, libertarian voting here, as that minimal central authority that's necessary in a certain set of use cases. But we realize that with the blockchain, its role does not have to cover every time one needs a trusted authority. And so I hope that we can inspire government to devolve some of its responsibilities down to the community because of what blockchain can do. And this, to me, is very much what our preamble talks about when we talk about promoting the general welfare. Finally, I don't want to dodge the bullet about cryptocurrencies, and so I've saved that for the last. Let me say that I am in agreement with both Warren Buffett as well as Christine Lagarde, in that Warren Buffett feels that Bitcoin may well end badly, and Christine Lagarde feels that cryptocurrencies are the future. I think both of those statements can be true. Because while I personally recognize Satoshi's work as a brilliant tour de force, I think we have to view it as a starting point and not an end point. There's a great deal of activity by many, many intelligent people in improving along those 5 axes that I defined, and best ideas should win. I think we should view Bitcoin as the opening act to the first inning of a longer game that is playing itself out. But I do believe that there is a place for alternative currencies. And I think, obviously, with the dollar as the world's de facto reserve currency, One needs to approach that situation with a little bit of delicacy, but that does not mean that we should stand idly by while the concept of money evolves. And I would call on us to do a combination of setting a regulatory framework that in fact protects our interests, but at the same time becomes a foundation for innovation. I think we need to embrace that. I think we need to sorry, having another one of those we the people moments. I think we should trust that Yankee ingenuity and ideals can inspire the world, and I think we should foster that free market of currencies. I want to close. I took the opportunity yesterday to go over to the National Archives and look at our foundational documents. And these are documents, it's interesting to reflect on the fact that the document is made immutable, Constitution, or technically speaking, append only, in part because of how widely witnessed it is. More than 1 million people go by one of the 4 remaining copies of the Constitution each year. And is that wide witnessing that in part ensures, wide witnessing and wide duplication that in part ensures the integrity of that document and the principles it represents. And in a sense, with the blockchain, we have created a modern version of that. Namely, we know how to build immutable records now with all the world as witness. And I think that lays a terrific foundation to proclaim liberty. So let freedom ring. Thank you.